It's time to rethink, renew, and reimagine retirement. Welcome to Retire Repurposed. This podcast is dedicated to help people transition into fulfilling and purposeful retirements. Retirement is a big life change. In fact, the two most dangerous years of a person's life are the year they were born and the year they retire. We believe that retirement is not the end, rather the beginning of what can be the most impactful season of a person's life. So don't retire, become repurposed. Well, I'm your host, Jared Sebest. I'm the co-founder of Retire Repurposed alongside Ben Tejas. Thank you so much for joining us today. Whether you're listening to us on the radio, maybe you found us online, regardless, head over to iTunes, find our podcast, click subscribe, and better yet, leave us a quick positive rating and review. If you just take a moment and do that, we would appreciate that so much. Now, this podcast is all about retirement, but it's not about money. It's about the non-financial parts of retirement, which many times can be even more challenging than the financial. Few people can just flip the switch from working a career 30, 40 plus years, shutting it off one day without taking methodical steps to living what we call a repurposed retirement. If you want more for your life and your retirement, then you have come to the right place. Well, on this episode, we continue our series on retirement habits. Healthy habits are important at any time in your life, but especially in retirement. Time is one of your greatest assets if you are a retiree, but if you have bad habits, that time will work against you. Today, we cover the habit of adding value. Adding value to someone else's life daily is a key component to living a repurposed retirement. In this podcast, Ben explains how the first step in adding value is having a deep understanding of yourself, and he shares practical ways to engineer adding value into your schedule. Enjoy this episode. Hi, folks. Welcome back. We are continuing our series today on retirement habits, and we have another stellar show in place today for you. We are going to talk about adding value, and you're going to hear more about that here in the minutes to come, but this is really a linchpin show when it comes to living repurposed. Before we get started, just a reminder, we have a Facebook group called Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. You can join a growing community of people that refuse to accept the typical American dream retirement. Look for more tips on living repurposed, special content, Facebook Lives, Q&A sessions. Go to facebook.com and search Becoming Repurposed in Retirement and click join. We've got a growing community of people, and they are getting the best of the best content. Yes, you're getting a lot of content here. Yes, you can follow us on retirerepurposed.com, but if you really want to connect with us in a really easy way and connect with other retirees going through the exact same process, I encourage you to go to facebook.com and join our group Becoming Repurposed in Retirement. Ben Tejas joins me on the show here today, and this is now show, I think, number 7 of this mini-series, and we knew when we started this one on retirement habits, this could be a show that goes probably a couple of months because there are so many habits that a retiree needs to not only execute, but good habits. They've got to be good habits. That's kind of the key.
Yeah, when we started this, I kind of was looking at it like, let's make a list of things, and it almost felt like, things that people had to, boxes they had to check when they get out of bed in the morning. And I want to make sure people know that's not what this is. We're not looking for somebody to create a list of all these things that they just don't methodically. They just check the box, check the box, check the box. We want people to hear this as this is really a creation of ideas that allow you to become fully repurposed in retirement. They're things that, if you can bring these things into every single one of your days, into every one of your weeks, months, years, that you will begin to look like the ideal retired person who doesn't look like most retirees out there.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, it's not so much just also looking different, but also it's fulfilling. We would argue that living this way is God's design for your retirement, following the world's ways. Anytime you're following the world's ways on something, probably off track just a little bit, so we're a little countercultural on this show if you're new to us. By the way, in your book, Ben, Repurposed, The Untold Story of Retirement in America, probably the most feature story in that is of a gentleman named Jim, where you gave him some bad advice, and you have seen firsthand the dangers of falling quickly into bad habits right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, and please do read my book, because it's 20 years of working with retirees all thrown into a very short, easy read. And that starts out with talking about a financial client that I was working with that, I gave him the advice to retire. I said, now's the time. He was 62. And I think the biggest thing with him is he was looking to retire potentially at 65. And when I ran the numbers and looked at his spreadsheets and did all of our financial work, he came out that now is actually a time when he easily could retire, according to the numbers. According to the numbers. But what I failed to recognize in that plan was that he wasn't ready. His bank accounts are ready, but he wasn't. And I think that's a key thing. I think when you're looking at making that decision of retirement, don't forget the non-financial side. And that's really what this show's about.
Yeah, it's what this show is about. It's what this entire platform is about. By the way, if you want a copy of Ben's book, go to retirepurposed.com. There's links to actually buy it on Amazon. If you want just a free digital copy, there's ways to get that as well. Easiest way, just shoot me an email. I'll gladly forward one onto your inbox, totally free, if you want to check that out. So we've covered a plethora of topics on this mini-series already. The last two shows, though, we talked specifically about setting a schedule. Back on episode 118, we talked about setting a daily schedule, things that need to be included every single day. And then last week, we talked about setting more of a long-term schedule, kind of a quarterly and yearly schedule. Biggest takeaways for me was there's a cadence, there's a flow that every day should have, and kind of your longer term schedules, your quarterly and your yearly ones, kind of follow a cadence as well. Why is this so important? Because it's easy to get out of whack and those guardrails disappear in retirement.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about is, in our working careers, there are things that we by default do because of the work that we do. I mean, it's just parts of our day that start to, it just works, right? So, Jared, I'm going to just go off the script a little bit here for a second, because I know something really on my heart today. Is I had a good friend of mine that I spent about an hour with talking yesterday that has just switched careers. In fact, he didn't switch careers. He just left the job he was doing. He was unfulfilled there. He was just kind of not feeling like this is where he should be. And through prayer, through talking with friends and family, just I'm gonna leave. And right now he's unemployed. And it's kind of scary, right? And I remember and hearing that for the first time yesterday. I wanted to give him a big hug, because I knew he was down, but I was super excited for him, because what he was doing wasn't really fitting his what he was called to be. And I kind of felt that for the last several months while I had that different job. And I got to tell you, he mentioned something. He said, I feel like I'm going through this fire, and it's my life is being changed, being thrown upside down, and I'm going through the fire, and what's going to come out the other side? And I reminded him, hey, you are a good man. I mean, this guy he is a man of God. He's a great guy. And I know that the things that are within him are so good. And what comes out the other side, right, is if you start with something really good, a fire will refine it into something great. If you start with something that's easily burnable and not good, and you don't have a good core, it's going to burn to ashes and nothing there. I know he's going to come out the other side very good. So I think for our retirees listening to this today, and as you're going through this stage of life, change, this big change, you have to hear that it is significant. It's going to feel almost like you chose to walk away from a career, and you're going to miss parts of that. You're going to feel a little bit funny at times. But certainly what we're going to talk about today is the key component that work gave you that you must keep in your current life. So we're going to talk about adding value. And I think that's something that, my buddy, I know he's going to come out really great because he's still adding value. And he's going to find another career. For retirees, if they're not going to continue in the workforce, adding value is something that they have to replace in their daily in their daily lives.
I don't think we've ever alluded to retirement as the fire. Certainly, society won't call it that. They'll call it the beginning of actually living. But I think you're right. I think for a lot of people that actually go through the transition from working to retirement, it's a huge challenge. And so I think calling it a fire or a trial is probably a fair statement, and maybe catching maybe a few people off guard with that. But I do think that is a fair statement. So let's get started with today's show. Again, we're talking about adding value. Before we kind of get into our three main bullet points here today, let's just talk about the importance of this. Again, it's maybe a little bit counterintuitive, perhaps, that we're coinciding retirement with adding value, but let's kind of set the stage for today's show.
Well, I think, again, I think the key thing that people have to remember is that I don't think you can live a fully repurposed life without adding value. It's impossible. I also don't think that we can live a life that's full of, that will eventually live beyond us, a legacy, a true legacy without adding value. So I think, we talk about the dream American retirement all the time, and that's not something that society's going to remind you of. Society's going to say, yeah, this is all about you. Let's focus on yourself, not something greater than yourself, a purpose that goes beyond yourself and adding value to others. It's going to say retirement becomes self-focused. You look at any advertisement out there, it is all about the retiree, not about the people that they're impacting. So, they're not going to talk about it, so we're going to keep talking about it.
Yep, exactly. The one thing I kind of see pop up in my Facebook feed or wherever, it's maybe some gentleman just stopping a guy on the street and saying, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" And there's been a couple of times where the guy's like, "Well, I'm retired." "Well, how old are you?" 53. "What did you do?" "Well, I made all this money." So what do you do all day? "Oh, I just kind of sit back and run businesses." And there's something significant about that. I think that I'm certainly not suggesting that what they're doing is wrong, but I think it's interesting how we idolize those people. The earlier you can retire, the faster you can stop working and having to work, the better. But again, that's not the goal. The goal is, if you want to go and be successful to a point where you can work a lot less and work on your own terms, wonderful. But I bet you those high achievers, I really doubt if many of them are sitting around kind of twiddling their thumbs. But yet, on this side of the coin, that's kind of the goal that we idolize lots of times, is so I can just now go and do nothing, and that's just not the case.
Well, the people that are doing that are idolizing it, are people that are like us, right? People, not necessarily me and you, but our age,
right,
looking forward to, oh man, if I can get out of this job, if I can get a break. And once you actually get there, you don't hear people that are retired talk like that.
Right.
People that are retired are actually looking like, hey, I'm trying to get busy with something else. I'm trying to fulfill my day with other things.
Yeah.
I'm trying to continue to add value. So I think that's a really key component in everything that we do. And if you're working today and you're not even, you're maybe 10 years off of retirement, I think people need to hear this message too.
Yeah, because adding value that also doesn't start at retirement. It doesn't end or start. And also too, I want to make sure people know too, like when we say adding value, we're not talking about working. Again, I think you could easily take out of context some of the things that we're saying, where these guys are just talking about adding value. So that, I can never retire. I can never slow down. That's not what we're saying either.
No, don't confuse adding value with working a job. That is not what we're saying.
A paid job.
A paid job. So sometimes it might look like that.
Sure.
I'm a believer that God created us to work, whether or not we're in our 50s or 30s or 60s or 70s, 80s. Yeah. We're created to work, do things to add value to others. Now, work looks different for different people and different ages. I've said it before on this show, and I fully believe this, and there are studies to show it, that when you retire, right, it ages you more so than just aging yourself.
Right.
that actually ages you more. But why? I think a big why is because people tend to slow down their mindset of looking at ways to add value to others.
Yep.
That's such a key component to life. God made us. He made us that way. From the very beginning, we were created to add value to others.
Yep.
So that is something that is so important.
So let's get to our first point here today. Number one, to add value, you first must know your purpose, or what we would call your repurpose. We've done entire shows just on this idea of self-discovery. It has to really start there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So if you can figure out, if you can live accordance with like this purpose and tie it into like a cause greater than yourself, that is where you'll find that full fulfillment. So, I look at our work with Repurposed University, and that has been huge. We've got got churches going through that right now. We've got small groups going through that curriculum. But it allows people to understand that they've got experiences from years of life, right? Abilities, which include different skills, talents, passions, and then the last one that we help people hone in on is their who. Who can they add value to?
Yeah, there's a whole process that we have. In fact, it's a major leg of Repurposed University. Like Ben said, a lot of churches, a lot of small groups around this area are taking this right now. If you want more information on that, just go to our website, retirerepurposed.com. And again, if you want more information, feel free to reach out to us. Again, my email is on there. We would love to talk about that and how to bring that to your church or your small group. But that's kind of the flow. It's like identifying your experiences, identifying your abilities, your passions, your who. Let's just talk for a second about your experiences. We talk so much about this idea of reflection. If you go back and listen to our show on setting a daily schedule, if you follow our process and what we recommend, that's baked in not only to the process of retirement, but literally the process and the schedule of every single day, because that's such a key component.
Yeah, it is. You can't understand really where you're going unless you know what you've done and where you're from. So I think every day that needs to be part of what we do. So reflection is a huge component. So when you reflect on those experiences, both good and bad, and highlight the bad, I think we almost learn more from those.
Yeah. And again, it's all about really understanding who we are, who we've come from, our personality, how God has created us, our passions, our who. Just another shout out, by the way, we did all the research with the 4 Animals personality test as well. We did a series of shows on that. I mentioned the Facebook group already. Just last week, I posted a big article talking about the 4 Animals personality test, how that applies to retirees. All the white papers are on there. So again, if you're not part of the Facebook group, go check that out as well. The whole point, we want to give you tools so you can understand who you are, because that's where it begins. The second point is really now taking that and applying it. So the question that I would have if I'm a retiree is, okay, I'm supposed to add value every day. So what does that look like tangibly for me?
Yeah, again, don't confuse it with going out and getting a second job or a paid job. It could or it might not. The key component to this is understanding you, who you are, like we've been talking about, and then try to harness that in the very best way to impact other people around you. Sometimes that's family, sometimes that's just people within your community. Jared, you had a podcast quite a while ago where you interviewed almost a year ago a friend of ours, Paul Tenhaken. He's the current mayor actually, reelected again over there in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and friend of mine from college. And what I so enjoyed about his interview was that he mentioned specifically we have to become better people noticers. What that means is when you're going about your day, it's so easy to become self-focused. It's so easy to become like, what am I doing? What I got to get this done, get that done, move on, and we forget. Just open our eyes and look around. I know that if we are careful to look around and watch the people around us, God's going to show you people that you can impact every single day.
I bet you could go through your phone, go through your list of your latest text conversations. There's probably a conversation that's open-ended. You could check in on a friend. You probably know somebody has some health issues. There's always out there somewhere to help. So again, when we say adding value, we're not talking about going and volunteering for 4 hours every day. I mean, you certainly could do that. But to me, adding value could be as simple as like, I just helped a friend, or I helped organize something to help a friend, or I mentored somebody, or I did something nice for my neighbor. I mean, it's literally as simple as that. If you did that every single day, albeit maybe small, you can count that up over the course of weeks and years. That's a huge impact.
And you become that person. That's something that I've, again, going back to habits, if you can't talk about habits today without looking at James Clear work with the Atomic Habits book, but he talks in there, and I'm not going to quote it, but I'm going to summarize, but talks about how your habits become daily votes of who you are, right? Of who you're becoming. So they reinforce what you are. So if you're going through your day and you are noticing people, and you're helping people, you are taking little steps all the time to become the type of person who looks like that.
Yeah.
So you can actually change who you are. So maybe in retirement, that's something this year you look at is I'm going to make these incremental steps, these little habits of noticing people so that I can add value and even really change not only who you are, but even your heart.
Well, the Bible talks about being a cheerful giver. I think many times we'll interpret that as like, I'm going to pray about it, and I'm going to ask God to change my heart and make me cheerful, then I'm going to give. It's probably the opposite, where against my flesh, I will choose to give. And because of that, and practicing that habit, that's actually how God changes hearts. It's probably through the, more so through taking action. That's kind of an important piece too. It's like, it's just getting up every day and just taking action. At the end of the day, wouldn't it be awesome if you look back and you're like, hey, I did something. Like I moved the needle in some way, shape, or form in somebody's life. I mean, that to me, that made it a great day.
Well, it feels good, right? I mean, when you can look back on your day and you did this, right? You actually took a step to make a difference for somebody else. That is when you can reflect both on that day, how well you've done. You can reflect on that week. And then someday, I'm telling you, when you are, I've had an opportunity to, my daughter's working as a CNA at a local nursing home, and you walk those halls. And if you ever spend just a minute or two talking with people in a nursing home, what are they talking about? The good old days. And if you want to talk about great legacy, it's the people that can say, I can remember not buying something or accomplishing even something, but I've made a difference in somebody's life. That's how that works. So again, these are incremental steps. Add value every day. You start to add value every week. You start adding a value-filled legacy-filled life.
And again, going back to our process, if you're following our template and process for each day, you're spending time before bed reflecting on those. And not only that, you're planning out your next day. You're kind of going to bed with the game plan as to what to do. To me, it's, I keep coming back to this, but it's so countercultural. It's so counterintuitive to how retirement is viewed. Because again, from our perspective, Ben, what we get fed as what retirement should look like, it's nothing. It looks nothing like that.
No, it doesn't. And what retirees have to realize is that what they're being fed over and over kind of reinforces what they're feeling. I mean, you are getting more tired, and they're telling me I should be tired, and they're, I'm starting to age, and there should be an army. I'm talking an army of retirees that is out there noticing people making a difference in their lives, because they're too valuable. There's too much to offer. And I'm talking, these are retirees in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 50s, right. Doesn't matter. Yep. I think there are so many people out there that we need, our generation needs those people to step up right now to make a big difference. And it starts with adding value.
Yep, absolutely. We got just a couple of minutes left here. Our final point here today is adding value should be balanced with rest. We've said it before, but I think it bodes saying, again, we're not suggesting that every day we just got to be hammering away, chomping at the bit here, just trying to work and check that box. That's not what we're talking about. It is about adding value, but there needs to be some balance.
If you want to have great rest, it starts with great work. Great adding value. So you can talk about the physical side of that, like actually working with your hands and doing things and being more active. You will rest better. Your mental rest will be the same way. When you can really use yourself to add value to others, when you get done with your day, or you are taking a break with the day, or you are saying, oh man, I've worked really hard for a couple of days, I'm going to have a great vacation feel. Retirees should feel as if there's times where they do vacation. I mean, it should feel like I have done a lot here. We're going to get away, and we're going to spend some time just getting away and doing something really, really fun. I think you're going to enjoy that way more. Permanent vacations aren't much fun.
Right.
I've tried long vacations,
and
I look you look forward to it, and then all of a sudden you're there, and then it gets a little long, and I think that's what I don't want for retirees, to have that permanent vacation feel.
I think it still follows God's design. Whether you're working a job, you're in a career, or retired, there's no difference. Follow God's design. Add value and work, 6 days, and then rest them 6 days. I still think, as a retiree, just like you said, I still think there should be a day every single week to a retiree where you unplug, you recharge, you unplug, and you rest. But there's a huge caveat to that. That's assuming that you have spent 6 days adding value. And again, it's just that's how God designed it.
Well, that's how God did it, right? It was 6 huge days of work and creative work and the things He did. I mean, creating this world, the universe, followed by reflection on sitting back, looking at all you'd done, and it was good, right? It was good because He added value, created, and now that rest was so amazing.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed this conversation on the habit of adding value. It's never too late in life to add value. This reminds me of a study done in the New England Journal of Medicine. An extensive study was done in the U.S. and it found the most productive age in human life is between the ages of 60 and 70. The second most productive stage in life is from 70 to 80. And the third most productive stage in life is, you guessed it, from 50 to 60. Clearly, the older we get, the more value we can add to others. So let's use it. Thanks again for joining us today. If you'd like a copy of Ben's book, Repurposed, The Untold Story of Retirement in America, just go to our website, retirerepurposed.com. Until next time, I'm Jared Sebesta. Remember, don't retire, become repurposed. We'll see you then.
Securities offered through Avantax Investment Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Avantax Advisory Services. Insurance services offered through an Avantax affiliated insurance agency.